seen column inches written about this. As you'll see, it follows a sine wave with the seasons. Nothing unusual there. A little bit of a loss of sea ice in 2007 in the summer, which was turned into a huge indication that within 5 years, according to Al Gore, there would be no more sea ice in the Arctic. Well, bad luck, mate. The purple areas on the September the 15th from 2007, 2008 and 2009, I got these off the satellite, there it is. We had 24% more sea ice at the summer minimum in 2009 than we had in 2007. That was a temporary local phenomenon caused, according to NASA, by unusually strong winds and currents coming up from the tropics. It was not caused by global warming, or very little caused by global warming, and as you can see, the sea ice is restoring itself rapidly as we see from this record here. Then there's Greenland, where you've heard it's all collapsing and it's melting and falling into the sea. Nope, it is still considerably colder in Greenland than it was in the medieval warm period. If you go to the Viking settlement at Valsay, which is where in southwestern Greenland, the burial ground there is still under permafrost to this day. Permafrost. You can't bury bodies in permafrost, at least not with medieval equipment you can't. So we know that those bodies were buried when that was frost-free, and now it's permanently under ice. And here, in a paper of 2005, done by laser altimetry, is an accurate measurement of what has been happening to the whole Greenland ice sheet over a period of 11 years. It has been thickening at a rate of 2 inches a year, or 20 inches in total, over that period. I wanted to see proof of this, because it was so much contrary to what everybody else is trying to tell us. So I got in touch with the US Department of Defense. I said, I want pictures of the dew-line radar stations as they were in operation and as they are now. Here's what came back. I think you can see on the right there what is happening as the ice and firn and snow builds up around these stations. That is what's happening to Greenland, and when you see it there, you realise how much they are lying to us when they tell us that the Greenland ice sheet is falling into the sea. Indeed, even the UN's climate panel admits that it will take thousands of years if temperatures remain at least 2 Celsius degrees or 4 Fahrenheit higher than today before you could lose even half of the Greenland ice sheet. So all that you've heard about Greenland, there, using the Mark I eyeball, we can see what rubbish it all was. And here is another lie you get from Al Gore. He says that a quarter of the world's population is dependent on glacial ice melt from the Himalayas, and that the glaciers are disappearing so rapidly that soon there will be no water for a quarter of the world's population. That is a lie. The vast majority of that region depends not on glacial ice melt, but on snow melt. And the Eurasian snow and ice cover, the snow cover here, shows no trend in any of the 5 winter months in the whole of the last 40 years. No trend, except that there was rather more Eurasian snow cover last year than had been seen throughout that 40-year period. There is the truth from Rutgers University Snow and Ice Lab. And here's what's been happening to sea ice in the Antarctic. You may remember that they were saying that sea ice in the Arctic had fallen to a dangerous 30-year minimum in September of 2007, from which we've seen large repercussions. But just 3 weeks after that minimum over 30 years in the Arctic was a maximum, a 30-year maximum of sea ice extent in the Antarctic, which went almost entirely unreported in any mainstream news. And here, therefore, is the regular heartbeat, the seasonal heartbeat, the kind of cardiogram of global sea ice extent kept by the University of Illinois, and you'll see no trend in 30 years. So all of that rubbish that you hear about sea ice disappearing, here is that one graph which shows what complete, utter nonsense it all is. Hurricanes. Al Gore again says, all the hurricanes, Hurricane Katrina was caused by global warming. No, it wasn't. It was caused by an incompetent Democrat administration combined with a lazy corps of engineers. And it was a force 3, category 3 hurricane by the time it hit. That's all it was. and the levees were not capable of withstanding category 3 because they had not been properly maintained. Nothing whatever to do with global warming, and here is proof. As of a few weeks ago, the combined duration, frequency, and number of hurricanes, typhoons, and other tropical cyclones around the world was at its lowest in 50 years, of which 30 years are shown on this graph. Not exactly a picture of dreadful alarm as we are seeing. Now, we get on finally to the truth. What is actually happening? What does the science now say? And the central point is that the UN is out of date. We begin with why it is out of date. It's out of date because it depends on models. It depends on, essentially, an enormous Xbox 360, where they play little games and try and pretend what's going to happen in the climate. Now, these models are entirely detached from reality, and I'm going to show you why we know mathematically that they must be detached from reality. Do we have any mathematicians here? No, I can get away with saying what I like, and nobody can get saying it. Here we go. Now, this is a paper written, it's a landmark paper, written in the Journal of the Climatological Sciences in 1963 by Edward Lorenz, the foremost numerical weather forecaster in the world. He died sadly a couple of years ago. He's one of your great scientists. And in this landmark paper, which is beautifully written, which he founded chaos theory with this one paper. A whole new branch of mathematics came from it. He says this: in view of the inevitable inaccuracy and incompleteness of weather observations, precise very long-range weather forecasting would seem to be non-existent. It is not available, he goes on, by any method. And long-term means no more than a few weeks. Beyond a few weeks, things go wrong. I'm going to show why they go wrong mathematically. It's important to understand why it is that the entire basis for the UN's estimates on this is unsound and not solid. I've taken as a proxy for the climate the simplest chaotic equation I could get hold of. And this is the Mandelbrot equation. Some of you will be familiar with this. The f of z maps to z squared plus c, c being a complex number. Now what we do is we plot various values of c with the on this screen, and I'm going to create a picture with this equation. Now you might think, really simple equation, only got one parameter, the complex variable c. Here, I've defined it for top left and bottom right to 16 decimal places, both on the real axis and on the imaginary axis of the complex number. We plot the imaginary axis on the y and the real axis on the x across there. Now, here's what we do. We try to imagine what the picture might look like. Here is a clue, and you think, well, there is a relatively simple picture. You'll recognize this as the oldest logo in the world. It's the logo of the Knights of Malta, to which I belong. But the real output of this equation doesn't look like that. Watch this, you're going to love this. It looks like this. That simple equation in one parameter produces this amazingly complex picture. Each pixel in that picture is independently calculated using that equation, using the value of c for that particular coordinate. And this is the complexity you get. Now, if I had altered just the last 4 decimal places in my specification of that initial variable, a completely different picture would have appeared, and that Maltese cross would not have appeared at all. If I had added just 1 to the value of c, there would have been no picture at all, just a blank screen. And there, we're using a really simple equation. But if I don't define that variable, that precisely, I don't get that picture. Now imagine an equation to define the climate. Millions upon millions of individual variables, none of which, not one of which, can be specified to anything like 16 places of decimal. And of course, in no time at all, you will get these phase transitions, these changes between one colour and the next, appearing all over the place in different